Hello, Namaste and Hare Krishna, and welcome to talk number 7 of the Vaishnav talks on Bhakti, 10 talks on Bhakti. Um, we've been very philosophical in our last talks, so I thought I'd begin with a story because this week we move into the area of the Srimad Bhagavatam, a very important text to help us understand what is Bhakti and further refinements of the Vaishnava philosophy and practice. In fact, the Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Bhagavat Purana, has 18,000 verses and everything is there. And I always recommend everybody to please read it as much as you can. To understand Bhagavatam, or how the Bhagavatam came to be compiled, we have to understand the story of Vyasa, or Srila Vyasa, or Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, or Srila Vyasadeva. He was a sage, a yogi, a great mystic. He is the great-great-grandfather, many times, of the Vedic literature, and the great guru of everyone, really. If you want to say that you have the best of all gurus, you can claim, if you're following the Vaishnava system, that your guru, your ultimate guru, is Srila Vyasadeva. It's because of him that we honor our teacher every year in a ceremony known as Vyasa Puja, or worship of Vyasa, the teachings of Vyasa, through the human being that we've selected as our teacher. But it wasn't always easy for Vyasadeva. His grandfather was also a great personality. Let's hear about him, his great-grandfather too. Let's go back to two figures who in Vedic history you will either have heard the names of, or you will hear the names of repeatedly, because the story of how we got here, the family tree of Vyasadeva, is equally as important as what he produced. So we'll talk about what he produced, but let's talk about how he got here. So there was a great king known as Kaushik, and he wanted to become a great sage like Vashishta. Vashishta was he was one of the Saptarishis, one of the 7 sages, the mental sons of Brahma, generated from Brahma's mind, and he lived practically forever, and he was the guru of the father of Ramachandra, Lord Ramachandra. The father's name was Dasarath, and he was the king of the capital city of Ayodhya, of the kingdom of Koshala. This was Vashishta. He was a Brahma Rishi from birth and realization. But there was some rivalry because a king called Kaushik once wanted what Vashishta had. So he came to the ashram of Vashishta, who lived in the forest, as rishis do. And he saw that when he arrived, there was nothing to eat. Well, where have we heard stories of kings going to eat with ordinary rishis? Of course, rishis live on fruits and nuts and berries and roots, the original vegans. But he had a cow, and he had some milk, so he wasn't a vegan. This cow was known as Kamadhenu. And when the king arrived, the rishi just looked at the space in front of the little cottage where he was living, and from Kamadhenu, this mystical, magical cow, an entire feast was laid. All types of rice and pastries and sweets and everything was laid out on banana leaves. And Kaushik was really impressed, and he saw there that his military power, his kingly power was challenged by the humility and self-control and discipline of a rishi. So he ate, and when he'd licked his fingers and washed his fingers, he plotted to kidnap the cow, to steal the cow. Because wouldn't this look nice in his palace? A magical cow that could manifest feasts for all of his visitors. So he washed his hands, all his men washed his hands. They went a little distance away on horseback, then they came back to steal the cow. Well, Kamadhenu, if she could manifest a beautiful feast, she could also manifest an army. So she manifested an army and she defeated Kaushik. And Kaushik was so impressed that he said, well, what's the point of being a king? I want, if there's something that kings do, it's that they want what other people have got. So it was then, so it was now. If you're the if you're the executive head of a country, you want other bits of other countries, don't you? And so this is Kaushik. So he wanted to become a rishi, but he had to do it by intense discipline. So he also gave up his kingdom and he went to the forest. By intense meditation, he gradually began to develop some saintly qualities. But he was challenged. The three challenges that came to him were lust, greed, and anger. And lust came to Vishwamitra in the form of a dancing girl, and then other temptations came to him. And when he'd conquered them all, he was acknowledged by Vashishta as a great rishi. And he became known as Vishwamitra. He went from Kaushik to Vishwamitra. But there was still some rivalry. Vishwamitra was, he felt belittled by Vashishta, so his pride was hurt. So he tried to make some arrangements to, let's just say, show up Vashishta when a particular sacrifice was going on and a king was insulted. So another king came and slayed the Shakti, the son of Vashishta, and a lot of problems were there. But from Shakti's widow was born Parashara Muni. He's known as the father of astrology. He's known as a self-realized sage since his birth. And from him eventually came, from Satyavati, came the beautiful child, or whether we should say the not particularly beautiful child. Vyasadeva was not, he was graced with knowledge and realization, but he wasn't graced with beauty. And that's why, well, there's another story, but he wasn't beautiful in that way. But he was born, and he was actually born and grew up on an island. His mother conceived him. Parashara Muni brought his mother smelled of fish. His mother was a fisherman's wife, and she was in the boat, and she was conceived in the boat in the middle of a cloud, which was brought there by Parashara. Now Parashara, he knew, and still we do today, that couples who want to have a baby, they can, through astrology, they can time the conception down to a very short band of time. This is still practiced in India and now all over the world, of course. So if you have trouble conceiving, you consult Parashara's knowledge and choose an auspicious time. So Parashara, he knew it was the right time to conceive. Satyavati was there, and in this very unorthodox manner, Vyasa was conceived. So Vyasa grew up on the island, and he was in the forest. But he didn't belong in a palace, but because he was such a great sage, sometimes they would bring him in for talks or for other enterprises. And the other enterprise he was brought in for was to create the the progeny. So by his union with other ladies, Dhritarashtra and Pandu and Vichitravirya were conceived. And of course they went on to become the fathers of the two families involved in the Battle of Kurukshetra. So Vyasa indirectly was the grandfather of this family tree that was fighting. And after the fight was over, he watched almost helplessly as the world was being torn apart. And after the fight was over, he retired to his ashram of Samyaprash. Now Samyaprash is still there. You can still go there. It's sort of between Nepal and China. When you get near to Samyaprash, you will find Indian guards or Nepali guards with guns stopping you. And then if they do let you go, you'll find Chinese guards. So Samyaprash is around there. So very high up. A lot of snow, but a lot of juniper berries. So I'm sure Vyasadeva and his disciples like juniper berries. But Vyasa means one who divides, one who compiles and divides. So he compiled the Vedas, divided them into learnable portions, and he gave his disciples, his chief disciples, 4 Vedas. So he gave the Rig Veda to Paila Rishi and others to Jaimini Rishi, like that. And they created family dynasties or spiritual family dynasties which come down to the present day. And any Brahmin now can trace his line back to some of these original clans, these spiritual clans that were created by Vyasa, 7 altogether. So then after the battle was over, he composed the Mahabharata, in which, of course, Krishna and Arjuna speak the Bhagavad Gita. And of course, Vyasadeva himself is in the book. It's sort of semi-biographical because he's in the book as well. And this is where we come in. This is where the beginning of the Bhagavatam records the event. That Vyasa's despondency, the reason why he felt still unsatisfied, of course the world had gone into great turmoil, but the reason he felt greatly despondent was that he didn't know the cause of his despondency, and he appealed to his guru within his heart. And eventually his guru came. Narada Muni came, and Narada Muni plays his veena, and Narada Muni was playing his veena and came into the ashram. And he said, the reason why you're despondent, the reason why you're unhappy is that you haven't fully broadcast the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. And of course, in all the Upanishads that we've been reading, it's cryptic, isn't it? We read about Brahman, Paramatma, Purusha, Narayan. We read about, but only the name Narayan, there's no details. So, what are the beautiful pastimes of the Lord when he comes to this earth? So, you haven't done that, and then you haven't given your readers of the Vedas a way that they can be saved in Kali Yuga. Most of the Vedas deal with elevation to the heavenly planets. The Upanishads deal with conceptions of impersonal Brahman, and also, as we've seen, a little bit of the personal. But until you've really described Krishna, then your readers don't have an opportunity of becoming devotees or in the short span of life. because he opens his Srimad Bhagavatam, doesn't he? Prayeno Payosha Sabya Kalavas Menyuge Janamanda Sumanda Matayo Mandabhagya Huyapadarata. That the age of Kali means people are always, there's always rivalry, there's always lust, anger and greed. Those things that bedeviled your grandfather's friend and enemy, Vishwamitra, bedevil everybody increasingly in Kali Yuga. That lust, anger and greed will be the main driving forces of society, the main driving forces within the human heart that make people make choices which are ultimately not good for them. They'll be disturbed, their lives will be very short, and there will be great problems, great battles will be fought for supremacy. It will be the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. People won't know where to turn. So write a book that helps them. So write a book about Krishna so that they can be attracted. Broadcast this book so that it can be understood. And give people an opportunity to get out of the age of Kali, to elevate themselves, become transcendental to it. So he went, on the instructions of his guru, he went into deep meditation, deep meditation. He went actually into samadhi. Samadhi is a word which means when there's no difference between external consciousness and internal consciousness. Sama is the same, sama. So you're elevated to a point where there's no difference between the object that you're looking at, like a tree, and you yourself. You lose consciousness of the differences between you and other things. And so in that state of mind, he went into a deep trance. The world around him dissolved, and he saw in deep trance, he saw some wondrous sights, and that's where we open up in the Bhagavatam. Of course, the Bhagavatam begins where the Vedanta Sutra leaves off. Well, not leaves off, but the Vedanta Sutra begins, Janmadhyasya yata, begins Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now's the time to wake up and try and understand Brahman, try and understand the spirit. What is the spirit? Janmadhyasya yataha. That which is the Janma, the birth, the origin, the source of everything. That is Brahman. Let's try to understand that in this human form of life. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. And the Srimad Bhagavatam that he eventually wrote provides the purport or the commentary to that. So it begins with the first words, Janmadhyasya yata, and in the Bhagavatam we find the very invocation is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I offer my pranams to Vasudev. And whoever you honor in the opening invocation of a book, of a Vedic book at least, is the person who's the subject matter of the book. So therefore, he opens up with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Then immediately he goes into Janmadhyasya yataha, Janmadhyasya yataha. In fact, he goes Janmadhyasya yataha navayada charatashtateshvara vigyasvarat tene brahma radaya adikavaye muyanti yatsurahaya. Like that. So immediately begins a description of what he saw in the trance. And what he saw in that deep trance was as follows. And he talks about it in the 7th chapter of the 1st canto, I believe. So, here's what I wrote. I wrote this some time ago in the Catechism, so I'm reading it to you. Yes, 1st canto, 7th chapter, 4th verse. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite male apashat purusham puranam mayam chatadapashayam. When his mind became absolutely pure by full absorption in Bhakti Yoga, he could clearly see the complete Supreme Person. He also saw Maya, originating from him and sheltered by him at a distance. This is 174. So this is interesting, that when he went deep into samadhi, aided by the words of his guru, who told him, I want you to go into a trance of not jnana but bhakti. I want you to see the ultimate. I want you to write about Krishna, so go see that which you've not seen yet, or you've not revealed yet. That's why the word apashyat. Apashyat means unseen. But Vyasadeva perceived reality, he tells us, he's writing the book, he tells us, he perceived reality to a previously unseen extent. And then he says, what did you see? Okay, Purusha. We learned that verse last time, Purusha, that word. He saw a person, a conscious entity, as the root of reality. And what was this Purusha? Purana. It was Purana Purusha. What's a Purana? Purana means complete. He saw the Supreme Person as the root of reality, but we learn that he was experiencing Advaya Jnana. Advaya Jnana means he was experiencing non-dual consciousness. This is interesting. Slight philosophical point here, that the non-dual consciousness that he was experiencing is not the same as ekatvam. Ekatvam is a word which means the oneness. Advaya Jnana means that knowledge which is non-dual. So you think that if something is non-dual, it's one. But the word is chosen, is very carefully chosen here. It means a sequence of realities, a oneness in character, but in typology, multiple. And we end up with this understanding of a hierarchy of ultimate realities. We talked about this last time. So a non-dual consciousness as Bhagavan, who contains, there's that example again, like a Russian doll, that Bhagavan contains Paramatma and Paramatma contains Brahman. 175 goes, Yaya samohito jiva atmanam tri gunatmakam paropi manote naratam tatkritam chapipadyate. He saw Maya, okay, she's off to the side, but he knows that Maya has come from this Parampurusha. He saw Maya mesmerizing individual living beings, or jivas. So the individual souls, Maya is mesmerizing them, who unfortunately forfeit their superior nature to make themselves a part of Maya due to their desire for her three mesmerizing qualities. So Sattva Guna and Raja Guna and Tamaguna, these are her qualities, and the jivas become mesmerized by them. So these first two verses, they give us what we talked about last time, was the Tattva Traya, the three truths. Do you remember that there's God, the individual soul, and matter, a triangle of connectivity between God, God and the world, God and the conscious soul and God, conscious soul and the world, like a triangle, Tattva Traya, the three truths, three elements of reality. Firstly, there is not simply Purusha that he sees in meditation, but the complete Purusha. And the complete Purusha also contains Shaktis, which are emanations, or what was the word we used last time? Vishesha, attributes. So Maya is an attribute of Bhagavan, although she's part and parcel of him, like the pinkness is to the lotus, or the fragrance is to the lotus. Maya is there as an inseparable part, just as the rays of the sun are to the sun. She's there as closely related. So, but she's off to the side. She mesmerizes the jivas, but she can't mesmerize Bhagavan. He's not mesmerized anything, because he's the chief mesmerizer of all beings. So she's in a subservient role, but he sees the jivas becoming mesmerized. And the word he used is mohita, or illusioned. This mesmerizing quality is like making the jivas, we would say, like drunk, intoxicated. Sammohita means completely mesmerized, completely illusioned. As we would say, some people on a Friday night become plastered, they become wasted, they're intoxicated, they're illusioned so greatly that they become, their choices that they make become an embarrassment to them. And when they wake up in the next morning, they think, what did I do last night? Oh my God, don't tell me I did that. So the jivas become mesmerized like this. And Maya generates something interesting. We all want samadhi. It's what we're all aiming for. It's the highest bliss. But this highest spiritual trance-like existence is what we're all aiming for. But if you become mesmerized by Maya, then you set your sights lower. You're looking for love, but you found it in a beer glass. You're looking for power, but you found it in a whiskey glass. And what happens is that you become, instead of finding the love that you're looking for or the power that you're looking for, you sink lower and lower and lower until you're after the same thing. You're still after the power, still after the love. But what you end up with is Maya, the magic. Maya means magic. Magical. Maya means magical power. Extraordinary power, bewildering power. So he sees this non-dual consciousness. He sees this non-dual consciousness with shaktis, with incredible power or magic. So the first power that he sees coming from Bhagavan, he names Maya, or the bewilderer. So most people think that Maya means illusion, but it means an unusual power, and the illusion is the byproduct. So Maya, or magic means to, like when you watch a magician, I've seen it in India. I saw a magician up close. Of course, magicians are everywhere, but I remember one in India, and I was right up close. I haven't been closer than that, but it was, it was evening time. But he was with an empty basket. He was bringing things out of an empty basket, a pigeon and a snake and different things. And it was, I examined the basket. It was empty. But of course, it wasn't a real magical power. It was a conjuring trick. So Maya or magic means to do sleight of hand. Sleight of hand. You make a gesture over here and people's eyes follow you over here. Meanwhile, something else is going on over there. The pigeon's being put in the basket, but you didn't see it. Misdirection. So Maya misdirects the living being away from Purusha. You want samadhi, samadhi is with the Purusha. But Maya comes in and says, no, look over here. I've got a pigeon. I've got something for you over here. And you look over there. So it's a sleight of hand. Now, one thing that we do not have in our Krishna Bhakti path is we don't have a devil. We don't have Lucifer. We don't have Satan. We don't have a fallen angel. Well, we have lots of fallen angels, of course, but we don't have one cardinal evil incarnation that is tempting me and pulling me away from God. It's not the same conception. Same conception is there's no one evil that's pulling you away from God. Maya is not the devil. Maya is the servant of the Supreme, whose job it is to pull you away in order to test you and to bring you through painful very, very uncomfortable realizations over many lifetimes that this world is magic, because the happiness that I'm looking for will never be found here, but I will find it with Purusha. But that may take some lifetimes. Krishna says, after many, many lifetimes, someone will come to me, Vasudeva, knowing that I'm everything. But before those many lifetimes are up, how many times will you go? Round and around and around and around samsara. So we've been misdirected. But Bhagavan, or Purusha, is Maya's ashraya. Ashraya means, like when it's raining, you take an umbrella. The umbrella is your ashraya, your protection, your shelter. That's where you find ashraya. It's called an ashram. So the idea of Krishna consciousness is to make your home into an ashram. But we're very reluctant, aren't we, to take to the path of the Purusha, the Purna Purusha. Maya is just so much more comfortable. You know, that's sort of a comfortable duvet. We'd rather not get up. Just like when we're watching a film. You go to the cinema and watch a film or TV or something. You don't want anybody sitting beside you saying, oh, I've seen this before, this bit is good. This bit's really good. What happens, you see, is that he doesn't know that she's like this, and she thinks that he's like, you just go, shh, don't tell me. And especially if someone comes and tells you, yeah, I've seen this film before, at the end, see what happens at the end is that you go, stop it, don't tell me. Nobody wants to know reality. We want to, as the producers of theatre and films tell us, we want to, or we have to, in order to enjoy the film, suspend our disbelief. Because the reality that we're seeing is just lights on a screen. That's all it is. Lights on a screen with sound effects and music. But if you think of yourself as sitting in a dark room watching lights on a screen, you won't be able to enjoy. So in order to enjoy a film, you have to suspend your disbelief and as much as possible be there with the hero or the heroine as they're going through their love or their adventure or their thrills or whatever it is. So the guru or the Bhagavatam or the sage or the yogi or the mystic, they're very willing to tell us the end of the film, but we don't want it. We have to believe that happiness is possible, but we elect to become influenced by Maya. We choose to become influenced by Maya. It's not that we're, thrown into this world by a envious, angry God that wants us down. Go to the material world. Go for 50,000 lifetimes and rot there until you learn to behave. It's not like that. Krishna doesn't want that. The Purna Purusha does not want that. But we're being tested because we chose to place ourselves under the ashraya of Maya. So we suspend our disbelief and we enter a world of illusion. Maya, who creates that illusion, is a Shakti or energy of the Purusha. Now sometimes philosophers like to say this world is an illusion and that nothing is real. It is all illusory, but that's not correct according to Vyasa. Vyasa doesn't have that. The world is real, but the illusion is one, that we are part of it, that we're made of it, that we belong here. That's the first thing. Second is that we can find happiness here. And the third illusion is that this is never going to end. I want to be young forever. I want to live forever. And then, too late we find out that's not correct. So Maya bewilders the jiva, but can never bewilder the Purna Purusha. Okay. Bewilder. It's a nice word that, isn't it? Bewilder. You know what it means? Bewilder means to make wild, to lead astray. You've gone into the jungle. You were on the path, but you've been bewildered. You've come off the path. So our fascination for a life that seems to hold prospect for us is what keeps us in the material world, keeps us in the clutches of Maya. We also, because we're from Bhagavan, we're from the Purna Purusha, we look at this world and we think, I could enjoy this too. And it's a natural thing because the jiva, the soul inside, is Anandamaya Vyasat. Anandamaya Vyasat means always seeking pleasure. So because we're always seeking pleasure, but at the same time we have separated ourselves from the Purusha, what happens is that we try to seek pleasure in the world as if we were Bhagavan. And that's the lesson that we have to turn around our consciousness so the consciousness of the enjoyer becomes the consciousness of the enjoyed. But indirectly, that gives us just as much enjoyment. It's a wonderful deal if you surrender to Krishna. So let's hear this. So a little definition here. Atmanam Trigunatmakam. Maya can create very beautiful things with her three qualities, these three gunas. And these are the things that fascinate the jiva. Paropi mannate naratam. The jiva is sentience. It is sentient. It can think, but it has a flaw, an anartha, which is that the jiva has a fascination with something external to itself. Tat kritam chapipadyate. It thinks itself a product dependent on Maya. So it's very interesting. There is a medieval doctrine which has become quite popular. You will have heard it before. It's called Advaita, which states that Purusha itself, or God himself, becomes bewildered by Maya and has lost that it's God himself who's lost his awareness of being God and has descended as the jiva. So the jiva, that means you and me, is just God trying to find himself again. But this poses real philosophical problems. And we'll, in a later class, we'll go into 7, no less than 7, real philosophical problems that brings up. But the main one is, how can you out-magic a magician? If a magician brings a pigeon out of a hat, and then you say, oh, let me do that. You sit in front of that magician, and then you do the same trick. Do you think that is going to fool the magician? Not really. It's a very crude example. So how can you bewilder the source of all bewilderment? If the Purna Purusha is the source of Maya, who's the source of all bewilderment, how can he become bewildered? The next thing you should ask is that how can the Supreme Brahman, which is eternal and infinite and uncuttable by anything, you can't cut Brahman into pieces. It is non-material. How are you going to do that? Just say that Brahman is a pizza. Okay, you have a nice pizza and you cut it into 8 slices with a pizza cutter, one of those round things with a handle, they use. You cut the nice pizza into slices, but for Brahman to be cut into pieces and to be, as the Upanishads say, 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair, who's going to cut Brahman? Or who holds the cutter? What is there that can cut God into millions of pieces? Third thing you ask, I won't go through all 7, the third thing you ask is, well, when one person becomes self-realized, then that means that God becomes self-realized and the whole procedure comes to an end. because God has realized himself. So if just one person becomes, if one jiva becomes liberated, then God now knows who he is, that he's not a product of the material world, that he's actually eternal and infinite and spiritual by nature. So the whole show is over. Someone's pulled back the curtain, and God can see how the trick was done, that he's been fooled, and now he goes back to being God. You see how it doesn't make sense? So they say, and the point is that it's an interesting philosophy, but it doesn't quite work out. They say that the world is an illusion, but they also say that the jiva itself is an illusion. To which we say, well, illusion is something that has come into the pure state of the jiva. So what's the sitting place of that illusion? For illusion to bewilder something, the something has to exist in the first place, right? So how is that possible? If something is an illusion, how can an illusion be illusioned? Doesn't make sense. It's called logical fallacy. So right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Vyasa is sort of setting his stall out that this is not the Upanishads, it's not Vedanta, it's not the Vedas, it's not the Mahabharata, it's something completely different. I'm telling you now in the first part of this book, Dharma Projita Kaitavotra Nirmatsaranam Sutam. This book, this one book that I'm writing now, it's free from imperfection. It's free from trying to cheat anyone. It's not filled with religious processes that will elevate you. It's just pure. That's what this book is all about. So he does that in the beginning. He sets out his stall. So Mayavada, which Prabhupada calls a form of word jugglery, Mayavada, or the Vad or philosophy of Maya, that Maya, the illusion, is what we've just been discussing. Prabhupada says the word jugglery is something that is philosophy for bewildered jivas, that in their attempts to try to break free from Maya, they come up with philosophy, which is also Maya. They can't do it. And like the Upanishad says, that once the Upanishads tell the story of the man from Afghanistan, the man from what we now call Afghanistan, used to be India. Kandahar, the man from Kandahar. One night the man from Kandahar was set upon by robbers, and he was locked up. His hands were tied together with rope. His feet were tied together with rope, and he was left in the desert. He was robbed and left in the desert. And he thought to himself, where can I go? How can I get free, and where can I go? I might be baked by the sun. I might fall over a cliff. I might be eaten by wild beasts. What am I going to do? And in that pitiful condition, he wept. And it was at that time that a kind gentleman came along and cut the ropes. So the Upanishad said, don't try to philosophize your way out of those ropes. Don't think that you can create a philosophy to break free from Maya. You have to be anxious to have a person cut the ropes that bind you as an act of compassion. And that is the words of Bhagavan himself. Because the Purna Purusha, the Supreme Person, knows better than anyone how to cut those ropes. So surrender to him in the process of bhakti, and you will be freed. Finally, Anarto Pasamam Sakshad Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvangs Chakre Satvata Sanghitam. He saw, this is 176 now, he saw bhakti to Adhokshaja as the direct cure for this misfortune. So just what we've said. People are unaware of this. So wise Vyasa composed the spiritual Veda. So Bhakti to Adhokshaja, here's another name of Purusha, is the direct cure for this misfortune that we're in. That's 176. So this is interesting. This word Adhokshaja is a very interesting word. Aksha is the eyes. These are the aksha. And ja means janma, is something which is born from the eye. Something which is born from the eyes, anything that you can see. So you can see the elephants on my shirt and my kurta. You can see them. So they are, the Vedic expression is that these are born from your eyes. If you didn't have eyes, you couldn't see them. They're born from your eyes. So adha means something that pushes something else down by comparison. So I have a small car, and I've just seen a big car that's bigger than any car I've ever seen. It's faster than any car I've ever seen. It's adha. It pushes everything down. So adhakshaja means that which pushes down anything that you could possibly see. Akshaja, adhaksha. So adhokshaja is the name of Purna Purusha, which means that Purna Purusha is that which pushes down the power, the beauty, the magnificence, the majesty, the compassion, the love of anything that you've ever seen before, anyone that you've ever seen before. This is Adhokshaja. This is the idea of God. So, Bhakti, the word comes from the word bhaj, which means to share. When we do bhakti, we share. You can only share if you know that there is another who will accept what you're sharing. So when you know that the Supreme is Adhokshaja, and share with him what you have in loving service, then this is cutting the ropes that bind you. Anarthapasamam shakshad. So bhakti nullifies the jiva's fascination with Maya by revealing that complete person. And who is the complete person? Well, the next verse will tell us. It's so beautiful. Yasyang vai shriyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe. Krishna is the Paramapurusha. Bhakti utpadyate pungsa shokamoha paya paha. Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Paramapurusha, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. So, 4 chapters, we're in the 7th chapter now, but 4 chapters before, Vyasadeva was recording a discussion where there's a sage named Sutta, and he gives a list of 28 incarnations of Vishnu. It's just like a list. So this is a Vaishnava book. We're talking about Vishnu. Let's give a list. So he gives the list. And then he says that the Sutta, the sage, says, Ete Chung Sakala Pungsa Krishnas tu Bhagavan Swayam. Out of all the names of Vishnu, the 22 avatars that I've described, all of them are portions or portions of the portion of Krishna. All the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions. Plenary portion means a full portion, or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Shri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. So, that brings us to the end. Good Lord. I thought this was going to be a short one. Shaktiman is he who has Shaktis. You know, it's like superheroes. Superhero has a different power. Everyone has a different power. They have a superpower. Fire or water or flying or whatever it is. But a Shaktiman is he who has all Shaktis, all the superpowers concentrated in one person. But three are of interest to us. Maya, bewildering potency, which produces delusions of who? Of the Jiva, that's the second one. The Shakti that experiences delusions. And the third thing that comes from the Purna Purusha, what is it that concerns us tonight? It is Bhakti. That's also a Shakti. It's an internal energy that frees the Jiva from Maya and gives it a relationship to Krishna, the Supreme Person. Wonderful. So we'll conclude here, and next time we'll be talking about even more incredible details on this fantastic Bhakti journey. Thank you very much for being with us.